Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and my co-host Justin Baker, as always, here in studio. Well, you're not always in studio, but you know you're usually on the show.
As always, co-host.
I think yes. There we go. I think that we have maybe recorded like 5 shows without each other.
Yeah,
something like that. 6 shows. The occasional interview, but yes, when you turn into Overtime Hockey Talk, tune in. You know, this is a disastrous intro, but I'm not going to take it away. It's here forever. Today on the show, we are just going to do our own players poll. So Justin's Brad Marchand, and I am Ryan Reeves.
How dare you?
And so away we go. See, you're already starting the bad trash talking.
Oh.
Now I need the good trash talking. If you don't know, Brad Marchand won Best Trash Talker and Worst Trash Talker. So I guess that means that some people think he's funny and some people are offended. I don't know how that works. You know,
something like that.
Let's see, what's 10%? So good chance 11% was his best trash talker vote, which, you know, I guess that says that probably there's 11% of the league that are Canadians and they're offended. Anyways, let's just start it from the top. We know that Connor McDavid's good. I don't know if I figured that this high a percentage of players would vote for Connor McDavid, but he won this particular vote. 63.6% of the league say he is the best forward in the NHL.
That's crazy. You think as much as Kucherov dominates the league right now in terms of points, right?
Right.
And as much as Crosby at 17.2%, I kind of figured he would drop off at some point in his career, right? But you think Kucherov would have got more than 3.7%. I mean, it kind of looks like maybe only the Lightning players and maybe some of the Panthers voted for him, and that was it. Yeah,
I wonder if it's just the fact that he plays on such a good team, whereas McDavid, guys are going, look at this guy cleaning up, and he's on a bad team.
Right.
I actually think what he's doing is far less impressive than being on a good team and being a high
what
point
McDavid
producer.
is doing is less impressive?
Yes.
Wow.
Than what Kucherov is doing. To have the kind of Kucherov's been pretty consistent. I mean, granted, this year he has more points than ever. This would, I think, in terms of looking at a guy's progression in terms of his age, I think he's probably right on that. Like, here's his top or one of his top seasons that he'll have in his career. Yeah, he gets to play with some really good players, but I mean, those really good players have to pass him the puck. They have to trust him. And so, you know, you look at a team that is also really good. I mean, there's other really good teams with really good players, and you don't see really good players on those teams putting up these kind of numbers often. I feel like when there's one really good player, you kind of surround that guy with a lot of other players, especially on the power play. You're just looking to get that guy looks because he's all you've got. And so he's going to get extra ice time. He's getting extra. Yes, he gets extra attention from the other team. I'm not saying that Connor McDavid isn't one of the best players in the league, but I think this is maybe a little too much.
Yeah, you know who I'm surprised to not even see get above the 1.7% that Sasha Barkov had in 5th place was Patrick Kane. You look what he's doing in Chicago. He's lights out this season and not even making the top 5.
Cray.
Yeah,
I mean, best. Yeah, it just says best forward. So it is funny. Nathan McKinnon higher than Kucherov, which again, there's another guy who's he sort of does it on his own, but he also has 3 pretty good players around him.
Sure.
2. Let's go best defenseman, and that's Victor Hedman wins that with 31.7% of the vote. Drew Doughty at 20.9%, then Brent Burns, Erik Karlsson, and Roman Josi fill out the top 5. Or do you think that Victor Hedman is indeed the best defenseman in the NHL?
Yeah, I absolutely would agree with this. I think he doesn't get the flashy points like some of these other defensemen do, like Brent Burns and Erik Karlsson, right? But his overall game, his defensiveness and his offensive prowess, like the combination of those two is just so much better. You know, like, for instance, we can look at Erik Karlsson, right? And I mean, granted, he's pretty good a defensive defenseman, but his game is mostly looked at. He's just an offensive guy who can drive the puck. And same with Brent Burns, right? He's a guy that just has a lot of offensiveness to his game and not so much the D side. So That's why I think they have a lot of that discussion every single year. It seems like I hear on XM or some publication, ESPN, it doesn't matter, TSN, where they always talk about how they need to have a separate award for best defensive defenseman and make the Norris just about the points.
Yeah, I can see that, but at the same time, why is it that and I wouldn't necessarily drop Victor Hedman in here. It's not like Victor Hedman's only getting 15 points a year, but he's really good defensively, quote unquote. There's something to be said about a player who you can put out on the ice and he doesn't really have to play defense because he drives the play so much. He knows where to go. He knows where to put the puck, and he knows how to shut down other players so that they constantly have control of the puck. Therefore, there is no, he's not as good of a defenseman as we think. Well, maybe he is. Maybe he is just that good that nobody actually has to go on the defense when he's out there. And I think that is, at least at one point, was the argument for Erik Karlsson, is that he's so good. As soon as he was on the ice, the puck was turned over and away you went. I mean, an Ottawa team that practically finished last a year after they went to the conference finals, and it was a year where there was all that turbulence and Erik Karlsson this and that. Erik Karlsson is, I think, the most impactful defenseman in the NHL when he's at his best.
Impactful. That's the key word, though, because to me, impactful.
But that's what I want.
Okay,
right? Don't you? Would you rather have a guy who's less impactful as another?
No, absolutely not.
Exactly.
No.
So you just serve my point. He's the best one. Okay, let's go best goalie. I'm going to let you take the reins.
Best goalie, wow. Carey Price coming in number 1, 29.9%, followed by Pekka Rinne, 17.3%, Vasilevsky just right behind him at 17.1%, and then Marc-Andre Fleury and Bobrovsky round out the top 5. So yeah, I got the former Vezina winner there at number 2, but Carey Price, the guy who last year looked like, to me, just a below-average goaltender, and he's been playing good this year, no doubt, but...
He's been playing fine this year.
Yeah, fine, but 12% better than the next guy the next two guys, I mean, Vasilevsky and Rinne are essentially at the top of my Vezina vote right now. And
would you rather have, forget the last week, would you rather have Carey Price or Frederik Andersen?
The last week? Forgetting the last week. Oh, yeah. Because Toronto giving up. We won't get into it.
Which I don't think we put a lot of blame on Anderson so much as we do on...
now, are we... Okay, I guess I would probably take...
But see, you're having to think about it.
Yeah, I have to think about it.
So is there that big of a difference between him and Price at this point? I don't know.
No, I don't think there's, if anything, like a 12% difference between like Carey Price and even Rinne or Vasilevsky. I would actually take both those guys over Carey Price, in my opinion. I'm not a huge Carey Price fan.
I think so. I mean,
it's even lessened by his contract now, too.
The thing about Carey Price is that when he's at his best, he's very boring.
Very boring.
He's very boring to watch because he's so damn good.
He is very good at the angles. He's not out of position. Yeah, his angles and position are very good. He's rarely out of position.
And so when he's at his best, like for the place I most remember him just being at the absolute top of his game was in the 2000 in the last Olympics, where he just you just watched him go. They were unstoppable. And even in a 1-0 game, he was just he didn't need to have these spectacular saves. He's usually not appearing on too many highlight reels, but he just goes about his business. And when he's able to be positional, it requires some good defensemen to be positional because you need to be able to rely on those defensemen to stop cross-ice passes. Right.
Yeah.
Which is why that what year was that winter, those Olympics? Was that 2016 was the last Winter Olympics, right?
No. 2000.
I'm sorry. The 14. Last one, 14 is the last
with
one.
With the NHL players.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that, I mean, he was phenomenal in those Olympics. No one, you couldn't score on him. Granted, he had maybe the best defense of all time out of any team to ever play the game of hockey.
That was ridiculous.
The worst defenseman, I think, was Jay Bouwmeester. But remember, that was Jay Bouwmeester 5 years ago.
At his prime.
Yeah, at like 29-year-old Jay Bouwmeester, right. So he was all right.
You had Pickles and Doughty as your top pairing. That was
I will say this, something that's very different about the goaltending position. When you look at the forwards, you go, all right, Connor McDavid, he's 22? Is he even 22? He's
Something
22.
like that.
He's 22. Nathan McKinnon is 24. Kucherov 23 or 24. All these guys are under 25, other than Crosby, who's just turned 31.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the defensemen, you've got all guys that are like 27, 26. Brent Burns is a little bit older, so is Carlson. I guess, guys under 30. You get to these goaltenders. I mean, Carey Price over 30. Pekka Rinne definitely over 30.
Yeah.
He's over 35. Right? Is he over 35?
Pekka Rinne, yeah.
He's like 37, isn't he? You got Marc-Andre Fleury, who's 33. You got Bobrovsky, who's 30. And Vasilevsky, the lone guy under 25 in the goaltending position.
Yeah, 24 years young.
Which is just very interesting in terms of, hey, who's the best? You've got, on one hand, the best forward is a guy who's 22 years old, yet the second best goalie is 37. So,
yeah,
just an interesting observation about the position.
You know what's crazy to me is to think that because I mean you kind of nail it where goaltending, right? They hit their prime a little later in their years. They develop a little bit further down the road than forwards do. But for Tampa Bay's management, you gotta tip your cap to them, because granted, I know Bishop had his injury his history of injuries. But for them to just basically say, we're gonna cut bait on Bishop, let him go wherever he wants, and we're gonna take a chance on this 21-year-old kid, like that was pretty smart. I mean, because Bishop was a proven commodity, he was really good in Tampa,
right.
And so to cut on a guy like that, most teams are dying for number ones, and you're just gonna say, okay, we're cool with this guy going somewhere else. We're gonna take a chance with this Russian kid.
Remember when the Montreal Canadiens came back down 3-1 to the Habs? It was Yaroslav Halak that was in goal for them, and they actually got rid of Halak the next year.
They said, peace out.
Because they had Price, and they thought,
go to New York.
Need to, and it ended up being a fine move in the long term. But I remember people saying, yeah, well, Price is going to be really good, but they just gave up one of the hot commodities in goaltending, and Halak
he's been fine.
Continues to be that guy. He can get really hot. Let's go best shot in the league, which probably no surprise to anyone. Over 50% voting for Alex Ovechkin. So I feel like the rest of them just kind of fall out. Shea Weber, 14.6. Maybe we say best slap shot goes to Shea Weber, and then the best shot. I don't know.
I think Matthews has the best wrister, in my opinion.
His is ridiculous.
It's deceptive.
And he just slightly changes the angle, and it's nasty. Patrick Laine, 12.6%. You were saying something about that was.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised for a guy that, don't get me wrong, the last couple years of his young career, he's scored some goals, but like he hasn't been the goal scorer that I figured for a guy who makes the top 5 in best shots, would be rated that high, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we see Stamkos and Matthews still scoring goals, and we know Weber, but for a guy, that much, at 12%, I mean, I figured maybe a little bit less. Is it maybe just because he was that good, and maybe he's just having a down year? I guess that people are like,
I think it's fair to say that he's having a down year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm surprised actually Chara's not on this list. If we're throwing Shea Weber in there, I feel like you got to lump in Chara with that for just hard freaking shots.
I got to say this though, he picked the worst time to have a bad year, because now, I mean,
who, Chara?
Oh no, I'm talking about Laine.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he has to sign a new contract. What's he going to get now?
Right.
$5 million?
Maybe 6.
Maybe 6.
Yeah, but they'll do a short deal with him, I feel like, because he'll be like, oh, I'm gonna bounce back from this.
Or is it that you go, well, we'll tell you what, we'll give you like 7 times 8 or something like that, and just bank on the fact that he's not
get better,
actually collapsed, and get him for $7 million a year.
You get a bargain.
Yeah, and you kind of give it both ways. That'll be interesting. Most underrated player in the league. We've, of course, typical Nicholas Backstrom's on this list, but didn't quite clip out Alexander Barkov, who it feels like it's those two. Like it's always those two. I do like some of the newcomers to this list, though. Mikko Rantanen was the 5th. He in Colorado at 4.4%. Same with Kuznetsov, and then Braden Point. So maybe some newer names to that list. I could see Braden Point or Mikko Rantanen becoming that talked about player where people are like, nobody talks about this guy. So let's always talk about him about how we don't talk about him. Because, if we don't talk about him, then no one will know who he is. Because we never talk about him.
When you're in a market with another superstar, like, you're going to be that underrated, like, not talked about guy.
Well, it's funny that Kuznetsov and Backstrom both made this list. And so obviously no one talks about anyone on the Capitals except for Ovechkin. I want John Carlson on this list. It is interesting, though, that there are no defensemen or goaltenders on this list.
Yeah. I wonder if goaltenders were even an option. I mean, would you think?
I mean, they were it was just the most underrated player.
That's interesting.
But maybe just guys naturally don't think of goalies.
True.
Most difficult player, to play against. Connor McDavid, of course, 30.9%. Interesting that this goes down. Granted, because there are, you'd think it's because there are defensemen maybe that are hard to play against. But no, there are no defensemen that made this top 5. It is McDavid, Crosby, Bergeron, and then McKinnon and Kopitar. So just because you're good doesn't mean you're hard to play against, I guess, is the...
I think Connor's speed is what makes him difficult. Like, just pure speed. That guy.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that, you go, all right, who's the best forward? Well, McKinnon, Kucherov, Barkov are all of those guys are on that list, but then they aren't on the most difficult to play against list. Oh no, McKinnon is. But Bergeron and Kopitar take the place of a couple of those guys.
Yeah, Kopitar, Bergeron, just great two-way guys. And Crosby, I can see Crosby because the dude is just so... he's good at everything. I still might actually put him as the best player in the world above Connor McDavid right now. So
yeah. And that next question: who would you like to start a franchise with? Of course, another Connor McDavid, 60%. But that's because he's young.
That's exactly it.
Crosby is old, and he still gets 18.5% of the vote. Of course, Austin Matthews is next. Patrice Bergeron being 4th on this list is surprising. Because he is quite old.
He is quite old.
Franchise
He's 34, 33?
Yes.
So
30. Yeah, and then Nathan McKinnon also. Answer me this. Not including any players on this top 5, who would be your player to start a franchise with?
Ooh, not on this top 5. It would definitely have to be a centerman, right? I think that's so. A given. I would probably go with Scheifele. Yeah, I think maybe Mr. Scheifele, or I might even reach a little bit and say Patrick Kane.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Patrick Kane, that's a hard one because being a winger, obviously
right.
That's difficult. All these players on this list are centers, but yeah, it's a hard. I think that I would lean towards picking a defenseman. I would probably take Victor Hedman first. Just build a team around Victor Hedman, and you're probably going to be okay.
That's interesting.
Anyways, okay, let's go to the game's best and worst trash talker. Brad Marchand, as previously stated, wins that award. Best trash talker, 21.3%. Worst trash talker, 12.5%. So what's that, like 37% of the league voted for him being either the worst or the best trash talker in the league.
That's funny.
And then it's everyone else. On the best, you've got Doughty, Ryan Reeves, Claude Giroux, and Nick Cousins. And then on the worst, Antoine Roussel, PK Subban, Nick Cousins, and Bren Lemieux. The only player to appear twice along with Brad Marchand is Nick Cousins.
Yeah, those trash. I think the worst, I would imagine, because I don't think they really ever give a good description of what it means to be the worst trash talker. But like, you're going up to a guy just skating down, hey, your face looks stupid. Like, that's just terrible trash talking, right?
Yes.
So that's what I imagine this is probably it. And I'm sure, Marchand, as much as he is good at trash talking, he probably just every once in a while throws out just some stupid lines.
He's at least entertaining. And
very much
and
so.
I would say the whole, like, okay, who's the best trash talker? I don't really care what you say. I want to know, who are you most afraid of is what I want to know.
Ooh.
Like, who scares the shit out of you? Like,
well, Matt Martin would say Chara right now.
Yeah, okay, there's Chara, but then at the same time, there's guys who, like, let's go back like 2011, Matt Cook might be up on that list, or like Rafi Torres. Like, who are you afraid might end your career tomorrow? That's what I want to know.
I like that. Now, now the NHL won't do that because, of course, they're trying to take the violence out of the game a little bit and that sort of stuff.
It's the NHL PA, so they don't want to make their guys look too bad.
Right.
I'm sure that Brad Marchand wears this with a badge of honor. The next question is unique. Who would make the best TV analyst once they retire? That's PK Subban taking that one, 10.8%, which he has done some work with Sportsnet. I've, when Nashville has been. Well, Montreal was out of the playoffs, or Nashville was eliminated. He jumps in for some different commentating, and he does a good job. You also have Keith Yandel, Ryan Reeves, Ron Hainsey, and Alex Stalock.
I'm glad they at least put one goalie.
Only one goalie. I feel like everyone who's a broadcaster used to be a goalie.
That's true. Here, for those who don't know, we're based out of Detroit, Michigan, and pretty much outside of Larry Murphy, they've got two goaltenders doing color commentary for Fox Sports Detroit for the Red Wings, and Chris Osgood and what's his face, the other guy, I can't remember his name. No. Darren Elliott. He was a goaltender too.
Oh, okay. He was an old goalie. Yeah, I mean, and then you go like Darren Pang, and you got Kevin Weeks, and I know there's more.
Brian Boucher, NHL Network, yeah.
And often they're the really good ones. I mean, they're the guys who are sitting back and watching a lot of the game, and they understand the strategy. And I imagine that many of these players also do too. I think that one complaint I've always had was if you go and you watch, let's say like an NFL Live on ESPN, and it'll be like, all right, here's Keyshawn Johnson and Terry Bradshaw and all these guys who are Hall of Fame players, some of like the best ever at their position. And when you're watching hockey, you're like, oh, Darren Pang, the guy who
was that guy?
Who was terrible in the 80s, and like all these guys that were pretty mediocre. Kevin Weeks was an okay goalie. He had some okay seasons. Nothing.
No Martin Brodeur.
Right home about. Yeah. I mean, you see Martin Brodeur doing Enterprise commercials, but that's about it. Like, why is it that high-end players don't go on to be in broadcasting like other sports?
That's a very good question.
And I mean, some of that may have to do with the way that certain athletes spend their money, and now they need money.
That's true.
But I have to imagine that, there's other guys out there that played at a really high level. Like, I'd love to see Brett Hull be a hockey commentator, like do color commentate. He was hilarious. Jeremy Roenick, I would say, he's probably the best on ice player that is an established broadcaster
in terms of star status.
Right.
Yeah.
When he played, he was a high end player.
He was a superstar,
and now he is a broadcaster. And so I would say that he's up there in terms of that comparison. But there's so many other guys that I'd love to see take that broadcast booth and, have that legitimacy behind them. And I think that it gives the game some legitimacy too, when it's like, okay, well, yeah. Hey, remember that guy you used to watch playing as a kid? Now he's the play-by-play guy. Like, I know some guys go on and they're GMs and they're coaches, and that's fine. But what about the guys that aren't? Surely there's somebody out there who is really good looking for a broadcasting job.
Do you think maybe it has something to do with the spotlight thing, right? So there's a bigger spotlight when it comes to NFL broadcasting and MLB broadcasting. So those guys that were in the spotlight when they were players, they're like, oh, I'm going to go into broadcasting because I'm still going to be like the guy. I'm going to be looked at as like, very well known. My name's still going to be out there. Whereas like hockey, it's, you don't see a lot of nationally broadcast guys, and we pretty much had the same group, Doc and Pang and all those guys have been around
they're
forever.
Generally not as outspoken. Like a PK Subban, you don't see that kind of guy in hockey, but you see that guy in basketball and in football a little bit more. Keith Yandel, I've heard do some speaking things as well, and he's good. Ron Hainsey was an interesting one on there, but I think that you'll see younger guys. Like, I'm wondering what players are about to start a podcast.
Ooh,
honestly, like what players that currently play are going to go, yeah, I'm starting a podcast. I don't care. I'm putting in my contract that I get to do a podcast if I want to. I don't, right now I don't know what their limitations are, but who wouldn't, a podcast, if it was two players that were genuinely enjoyable to listen to, like let's say Austin Matthews, Patrick Marleau, and Mitch Marner started a podcast. People would freaking listen to that. They 100%
absolutely.
would.
Absolutely.
So what? Like, I feel like we'll see that eventually. And I mean, even it doesn't have to be hockey, but it can be any other sport. When are we going to start seeing these athletes start their own podcast? Because it's
Ryan Johansson and PK Subban. I would listen to that one.
Yes.
So.
Exactly. Which you'd get, like, I mean, you look at how big the Spit and Chicklets has blown up, and you know, this podcast, how big our podcast is, you know.
Huge.
Hi, Mom. So anyways, all right, let's keep chugging down our list. We have, who would make the best GM when they retire? Sidney Crosby, finally the top of one of our lists, 5.5%. So there's obviously a lot of players in the league that players tend to lean towards, think they'd be good GMs. You got Jason Spezza, Brooks Orpik, Mark Scheifele, and Derek Stepan also on this list. Is there anyone that you also think might make a good GM? Maybe that's not on this list.
I don't know. This is a tough question because obviously I don't communicate or don't really like interact with these guys, you know, especially most of these players do on a daily basis with each other, or, you know, they have a lot of interaction. So you know where a guy's intelligence is. So I guess maybe I would have to take somebody's on ice IQ and maybe hope that it translates into general manager, right?
Sure.
So if that's the case, I would maybe Patrice Bergeron, maybe.
Yeah. Could go and be the GM of Montreal. Got to be a French guy.
Yep.
Who is the funniest player? Keith Yandel takes it, 12.1%. So he would make a great play-by-play guy, and he's the funniest guy, along with Drew Doughty at 7, Dustin Byfuglien, then Brent Burns, and Dan Girardi gets 5th with 2.5%.
I'm surprised Burnsy isn't higher on this list, honestly.
I mean, that beard and the teeth alone.
Yes.
Just give him the stash. Yeah, it's just the status of that. I want to have Keith Yandel on the show so we can find out how funny he is. Okay. That's the goal. Best current female hockey player. Top is Hillary Knight, then Marie-Philippe Poulin, Amanda Kessel, Kendall Cone Schofield. She's the one who won who competed in the fastest skater and actually beat somebody.
One guy.
Yeah. And then Emily Falzer. Don't have much to say about women's hockey because I don't watch it.
Yeah,
I don't have anything against it. I just don't know really where. I did
read though that they put out invitations now for officiating combine they're having, and they're getting a lot more women signing up. So we're going to see some female officiants here pretty soon.
Yeah,
so I'm excited for that.
There already is in the NFL. There's umpires in the NFL who are women. So we'll see it very soon. Would you be in favor of regular season game featuring nicknames on jerseys? And it shows a picture of Tatar's jersey and then also another picture of his jersey with the nickname Tuna on it.
Tuna.
And 66% of players said they would be in favor of this. Would you be okay with this? Like, are you? Let's broaden this. How much freedom should teams have with what they put on jerseys, and how much freedom should players have on what goes on their jerseys?
I feel like this could get dirty really quickly. And yeah, there would be some terrible nicknames where I think parents would go and be like, cover your eyes.
Well, okay, let's those aside, you know, obviously
like you might see some nicknames on the back like D-bag or, you know,
I would
Big
hope
Sack
that's
or something.
That's a brutal nickname if that's
your
nickname's
yeah.
D-bag. Actually, there was a guy in college. I was the RA, and it was his first time there. You know, he was bringing his stuff in, and I said, "Hi, douchebag." Just called him douchebag. First time I ever saw him. He kind of looked like it, like he was like a pretty boy, so I just called him douchebag. But I called him douchebag every single time I saw him for the first week. I actually ended up being in his wedding years later. But he told me, he's like, I thought you hated me, and I had no idea why. I was like, no, I thought you were cool, so I called you douchebag.
Oh my gosh. Did I ever tell you my high school nickname?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so my dad, big race car guy, right? He used to be an IHRA Pro Stock crew chief. He has his own race cars right now. He's really big into the motor stuff. But anyways, so he used to always get a lot of free merchandise from companies, hats, t-shirts, that sort of stuff. And so like as a kid, like I didn't really think anything of it. And I used to wear some of the stuff. Well, I had a hat from this company called Jegs, Jeggs.
Okay.
Somebody
like jeggings.
Pretty much. Somebody misread it. And like out of nowhere, they just looked at me and was like, "Does your hat say Jugs?" And no joke, from 9th grade on,
oh God,
my nickname was Jugs. But it was only in like a small group of people. So once I actually was, fairly popular in my senior year, like nobody called me that. But for like the first couple years of high school, everybody called me Jugs all the time. It was pretty ridiculous.
I love it. I love it. Jugs. Well, Jugs, let's go on to the next question.
I would not want that on the back of a jersey. That's all I'm saying.
Jugs. Yeah. Would that be Juggs?
That's exactly it.
The double G Jugs.
The double
Those
Gs.
are some big ass jugs. Let's go. Which arena has the best atmosphere? Number one is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. They have stolen the show in terms of people going there. People love it. Next is the Bell Center, 21, 14% Bridgestone Arena, 10% at the United Center in Chicago, and a nice little tip of the cap, 3% to the Minnesota Jets. Minnesota Jets, the Winnipeg Jets. Sweet mother, what's happening? Any like pushback against this?
No, I'm okay. And
do you think the Joe could be on this list if it was still in existence?
No, not at all. I think there's a reason that was a terrible arena. Oh my gosh. Maybe in its heyday it was great, but the latter years were just awful. But there's a reason they modeled the Little Caesars Arena pretty much after the Bell Center, because it just feels like it's engulfing the players on the ice the way the seats are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's very cool. It's great to sit in because you feel like you're on top of the rink. Even when you're pretty far back, you see everything really well. Which arena has the best ice? The Bell Center wins that one, almost 30%. Then the Rogers Center, Bell MTS Place in Winnipeg, not Minnesota. Next is Minnesota, the XL Energy Center, and then Las Vegas, the T-Mobile Arena. Interesting that the T-Mobile Arena has, fifth best ice is voted by the players in the league.
Yeah, they must take really good. I can't imagine that any place that's in warm climate has good ice.
Right, that's what you'd think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting. Best NHL team mascot, Gritty.
Dude,
That's
no
it.
contest.
That's it, Gritty, 69.4%.
Surprised it's not higher.
The next highest, Carlton, the freaking Bear for the Leafs at 2.7%. So nobody voted for anybody but Gritty. Gritty has to be the most popular North American sports mascot.
Dude, he's so great.
Period.
So great.
Such a weird. Who designed that thing? They need professional help. We're gonna skip best dressed, best hair, because who cares? Best nickname. Let's do best nickname. Give me your best nickname in the NHL, and we'll throw this list out there.
Ooh, geez, I don't even know.
Now, Thomas Tatar, Tuna, wins this one, 5.6%. Then you have Breadman, Marco Snacks Dano, Christian Stinky Fisher, and Connor McJesus McDavid wins the.
I didn't even
2%.
know his nickname was McJesus. That's just, a lot of these nicknames, right, are obviously like, what's the word? Why can't I think of it? But like inside jokes, right? They're just within the players themselves. They know. So
I'll say my favorite is Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Pickles. Yeah,
I just think that's so fun. Like that just cracks me up. I feel like it's so creative with the big. I just love it.
Yeah, it would be Big Z. I don't mind that one so much. I think that one's appropriate. But yeah, Pickles and Breadman are probably up there for me. I used to call Tatar tarty sauce when he was in Detroit. So
Tartar.
Yeah, so
Tartar
he never
sauce?
really got tuna. I don't know.
Yeah, where did that one come from? Was he always called Tuna when he was here?
That was his nickname. So
Hey,
I don't know.
All right. Well, best athlete or favorite athlete outside of hockey is our last one, and topping out that list. Who the hell still cheers for Tiger Woods? I don't know, but apparently 30% of the league is still enamored by Tiger freaking Woods.
Tiger freaking Woods. I'm actually
who hasn't been relevant in about 7 years.
He had a nice little comeback last year, and, but he hasn't been dominant in the sport, right? So you think like that's where most of these guys would put their vote, right, in a dominant athlete. Roger Federer, right? Lionel Messi. These guys are
Tom
dominant.
Brady even.
LeBron James. Yeah, these are all guys that made the list, but not even half of what Tiger Woods got. So that's a little crazy to me. I figured there would be more. Djokovic, there'd be more tennis guys on here, to be quite honest, or soccer guys, in my opinion, because we got a lot of Europeans.
Yeah, the Euros.
So,
yeah, for sure.
Who knows?
Well, all right. That's our overtime hockey talk players poll. We did our own players poll between ourselves, two of us.
Yep. Congratulations.
Before we close out the show, you wanted to talk a little bit about Mike Babcock's comments on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I just want to talk about
last week,
the wing or the Leafs in general, because I'm starting to worry about them. Right? They came out hot to start the season. They played fine for however many months afterwards, but then they've just been terrible looking the last couple weeks, and I think 5 out of the last 6 games they've given up 5 or more goals, and of course that one that they didn't give up 5 goals. They didn't score any goals. So they lost 3-0 last night to Nashville. And, for all the defensive deficiencies we can say that they have, it looks even more evident. And Babcock is coming out saying things like, for instance, after last night's game to Nashville, he was talking about how they are so deep, how they can roll 4 lines. And, when you have that kind of depth, you have the opportunity to blah, blah, blah. And it almost seems like he's been starting to take cracks at his own guys. Like he doesn't expect to be there after this season. So he's just literally calling guys out like, screw it, I don't care.
You don't think that Babcock expects to be there after
No. He'll be here after the season. I mean, there's no way they're firing him right now, especially with the money they're paying him. But it seems like, he's just like, I don't care anymore. Like I'm just calling out people. I'm calling out the team for playing like garbage. And essentially he was just saying like, okay, well, we know Toronto's got forward depth, but it almost seemed like he's like, yeah, but these guys aren't playing to where they should be, so we don't have 4 lines we can roll out because they're just not worth putting out there.
Yeah, and I can understand that frustration. Certainly, it is his responsibility to get guys going for each game, but this is also what happens when maybe all your best players are younger. Is that sometimes you hit a point where you coast for a minute. You think you're hot stuff. And then you start to coast, and this is not the time of year to coast. Even like they lost 6-2 to Ottawa. There's a team you're expecting to go in and have like, all right, we're going to play Ottawa.
They should have won 10-0 against Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa is so devoid of talent.
They're the doormat right now.
The thing is that there's a lot of players playing for future money there right now, and there's players playing for a spot next year, and so those guys personally have everything to gain. And so if you come into that game with anything less than your best, you're going to get run over because guys don't care. There's some players there that they know if they don't perform in these next 15 games, this might be the end of their NHL career. Like they may never see the light of day in the National Hockey League again. And so now is the time to play this way. So to me, I mean, you have to come into these games knowing that these other teams aren't just going to back down because they're out of the playoffs. Like they're playing loose. They don't care. You're trying to figure out your stuff. I mean, it's time to ramp it up. I think you did see that against Nashville. I'll be honest, watching that game, I mean, the Leafs got absolutely robbed. I think that in 9 times out of 10, you probably win that game. Pekka Rinne stood on his head.
He did play really
Nashville,
good.
Really, they weren't creating any opportunities for themselves. I think they had 2 shots in the second period. It was all Toronto. But obviously you have to score, and sometimes that is the way that a good team wins, is that they get dominated, but they're still able to win. And I think that it just shows that the Leafs, with their current team, they maybe just aren't quite there yet in terms of that top 3 team in the league. But can they win around against Boston? I still think they can. I think that the playoffs are a new season. You can come into the playoffs. We've seen teams roll into the regular season and get dropped by a team that didn't look like they had much left in the tank.
Right. Now, are you concerned at all about maybe a lack of leadership in the room?
I'm not concerned about lack of leadership.
Okay.
I think it's just, you've got young guys who personally they're learning. They're learning how hard you have to go all year long. And, of course, you have guys like Marlowe and you've got Hainsey. I think some of it is maybe a deployment issue, but at the same time, they've had guys that are hurt. So a lot of this is kind of coming at a weird time of the year. I just think it's okay to semi-limp into the playoffs. We've seen it happen before and teams do well. I mean, that Los Angeles Kings team that barely squeaked into the playoffs at the very end of a season, I mean, they managed. There's been teams who, and I mean, that team even lost the first 3 games of the year to the San Jose Sharks, or games of the playoffs, and came back, won that series, and away they went and won the cup. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Ideally, are you limping into the playoffs? No. I still look at this like that Bruins-Leafs series as anyone's anyone's game.
It's going to be a fun series.
And then, whoever plays Tampa loses. So
Pretty much.
that's why I'm not as I guess if they lose in the first round, yeah, it's not ideal, but I'm not as upset about it because if they get swept or something by the Bruins, then it's bad. If they lose in 7 games,
that series has to go 7.
Be pissed, but it's whoever plays Tampa. It's going to be a rough go against Tampa. They're so good, and I guess it's not to say that there's no hope for anyone to play them, but chances are you're going to be let down.
Yeah, boy. So, last question for you about Toronto. At any point here, the last 10 dozen so games they have left, do you split up Marner and Tavares?
Well, they haven't been doing much the last little bit anyways.
Right, and they, to me, are probably the 2 best defensive-minded forwards on the team, but they're still obviously the best producing guys.
Right.
So, maybe that can help, the defensive side of the game where they seem to have been struggling very much so last couple weeks.
Yeah, there's so many options. I don't know. There's some sort of reset button that just needs to be hit for this team because 6 weeks ago we were talking about how good this team was.
True.
And so it's okay. Like every team goes through these ups and downs except for Tampa Bay, and so we'll see if they can push through this. I'm okay with this because this is some adversity. This is the time of year to have some adversity and struggle with it. Because if you have adversity in the playoffs and you don't do well with it, you're going to lose. So I'd rather these guys learn maybe some new lessons now and limp into the playoffs. Or, who's to say the last 10 games of the season, they don't rip off 8 out of 10 and come rolling into the playoffs and everyone forgets about all this.
All right. Perfect.
We shall see what happens. Well, that's our show. We would love to chat with you on Twitter as well at OT Hockey Talk. Let us know what you think of the show. If you have any suggestions or you just want to talk smack, we are here for you. We'll talk to you guys